Hi students, good morning. So this will be the continuation of writing culture paper, and so far we have dealt with what is academic writing, and we've also kind of known certain basic traits of academic writing. So today we'll know something about what could be the differences between academic and non-academic writing. Because we are dealing with a writing culture, it is important that you know both. So for your examination, you need to be prepared for both different kinds of both kinds of writing, academic and non-academic. In the sense, you should be ready for both theory and also some practical work. The questions could be on some theoretical aspect of academic writing or non-academic writing. In the meanwhile, there would be one or two questions on the practical part of it. Some question might ask you to do some kind of academic writing by giving you a particular topic. In the meanwhile, some topic would be given, and you might be asked to do some non-academic writing as well. So what is important in this paper is you need to know the essential traits of both academic and non-academic writing, and in the meanwhile, besides knowing the theory part, you also have to be proficient in the practical part as well. So the moment you know anything pretty theoretical, you have to move towards the practical implementation part of it. So you have to prepare for both components simultaneously. And in the first few clips, I've given you only the theory part, and today again some theory part for non-academic writing. And maybe from the next few clips onwards, we'll deal with certain practical aspects of how we can possibly approach this writing culture practically. In today's clip, I am going to talk about non-academic writing. So what is this non-academic writing? Simple. When you do any non-academic writing, you don't make any serious claim like how you do in your academic writing. Non-academic writing is not done for the purpose of doing any kind of favor for the society. You do it only for your own satisfaction, and you don't really claim to add to the existing knowledge. You don't want your write up to be educational in nature, like how it is in the case of academic writing. But when you do this academic writing, it is 100% educational, and it is serious work, and you know who the audiences are. But in non-academic writing, you don't care too much about your audiences. You will write it only for your own satisfaction, and you just share your opinion with the world without worrying about who the reader is. You know there will be one or two readers when you do this non-academic writing, but you don't really think too much about the impact that your writing will have upon them. But when it is academic writing, you need to know that you have a lot of responsibility, and the impact your write up will have on the reader is very important for you, because you have a specific objective behind academic writing, and you also want to ensure that what you intended before you wrote that particular academic piece has to, of course, reach the reader almost in equal measure. There should not be much of difference between what you intended to write and what the reader understood. So when you do this academic writing, there is a lot of planning that you normally do. So what do I mean by planning here? The moment you take up academic writing, there is some kind of organization going on in your mind. You think about a topic. You think about a topic quite seriously. Topic selection is very important in your academic writing, and in non-academic writing also topic selection is important. But here, when it is academic writing, you make the selection of your topic on the basis of its researchability scope. But in non-academic writing, you don't really have to worry about the researchability scope. What I mean by researchability scope here is, when you make a claim doing academic writing on a particular topic, you should think about the availability of evidences to prove your point. But in non-academic writing, the demands are less. You are not responsible for really proving your point, in the sense when you make a point, you don't have to worry too much about proving it, because in non-academic writing you are not trying to be educational, you're only sharing your opinion, and there you have certain amount of autonomy. But in academic writing, you don't really have so much autonomy to just simply share your opinion. So in the first step, that is in the topic selection part, you have to be quite serious in both aspects, but the consequences are not your responsibility in non-academic writing. But in academic writing, consequences are also your responsibility, because you make serious claims there that you are actually making a serious attempt to add to the existing knowledge. But non-academic writing is not considered as knowledge because it is not evidence based. It is only an opinion of the writer about some topic in question. But academic writing is not limited to simply sharing your opinions. And here in non-academic writing, you don't have to be very analytical like how you will be in your academic writing. In academic writing, analysis actually depends upon how you use certain theories in practice. And in the meanwhile, in academic writing, you also claim to produce a theory. Because ultimately, when you finish doing your work in the realm of academic writing, you would have produced a new theory all by itself. But in non academic writing, there is no such practice of producing a theory. You're only producing some opinion, you're only constructing some opinion. So try to understand that I'm using this word opinion quite repeatedly. Non-academic writing is all about sharing your opinion with the outside world. And when you write academic writing, you make a thesis statement clearly, in the sense you are actually trying to communicate to the reading world that the readers have to understand your writing in a particular manner, in a particular area. You define your scope very clearly in academic writing, and you don't want the reader to go beyond that particular scope. That is, in case you are dealing with maybe a novel in academic writing, you make a statement in the beginning itself that the reader has to understand that your writing on a particular novel is only limited to a particular context. So the reader will not question you beyond that particular context. Meaning, format does matter in academic writing. But in non academic writing, you will not worry too much about your scope. You will have a lot of freedom to even meander through a particular topic. You can in fact drift away from your topic. You can do anything there in non-academic writing. It's not that you can be completely unserious about non-academic writing, but the autonomy part will be slightly more as compared to your academic writing. So in non-academic writing, we don't really make a thesis statement strictly. We don't define our scope. We might slightly, we might, but it's not as serious as academic writing. And next thing is, when it comes to the organization part in academic writing, you cannot leave out certain headings. You need to make a thesis statement. You have to clearly mention what your aims and objectives are, and what the reader has got to ultimately gain from your writing. And in the meanwhile, you also have to give a proper idea about how you plan to construct your writing. And the reader in fact has to limit himself to that particular uh, realm that you give. But in non-academic writing, you don't have to do so much, in the sense you don't have to mention how you plan to construct your argument. You don't have to mention how you have actually arrived at the conclusion that you are arriving at. And you don't really have to think too much about what the reader would do after reading your write-up, because non-academic writing in fact is not educational in nature. So, what could be the examples of non-academic writing? You need to think about it. Uh, when you write maybe an essay, it could be maybe on a cow. You have all written essays on cow. Maybe when you are in high school, and even when you came to college, you could have been asked to write an essay on cow. It's a kind of a common topic for all of us in India, right? And now you just assume that there will be a question on non academic writing in the examination where you will be asked to write about a cow. Apart from mentioning that it's a four legged animal, which of course gives us milk, which we use to make tea and coffee, there's something more that we normally expect because you are doing this particular write up at MA level. And because you people are MA students, even though the topic, of course, has been pretty old and hackneyed, our demands will be slightly higher because we expect you to know about this particular cow, not just at its fundamental level. You got to have some elevated information about the cow because we expect you to give certain cultural components as well, which are associated with the idea called cow. I repeat, we are not dealing with the cow as just an animal. When it is an essay that you are planning to write at higher education level, you are also dealing with this cow as an idea. It becomes an ideology. And if you manage to derive some kind of an ideology from your idea of a cow and write an essay, it will not be considered as purely academic because you are only doing this kind of an analysis from your personal experience of this particular world where you don't make a serious claim to add to the existing knowledge of this world. So there could be questions on essay writing. So you got to kind of start looking up some information about how to write essays. And there will be word limit. There will be word limit in the sense because it is examination, we want to test your skill of writing, and because this paper is all about writing culture, we would definitely want to test your knowledge of writing where you can write about a particular topic in the given space. Supposing I ask you to write an essay on cow, I might say that you cannot exceed a particular number of words. And when it is you cannot exceed, you have to strictly limit yourself only to the given number without exceeding the given limit. The moment you exceed the given limit, then the evaluation will be slightly negative, in the sense you lose marks. So try to understand that when it is writing culture, we are testing your writing skills at different levels. And in non-academic writing, the first example I have given you here is it could be maybe an essay that would be asked in your examination, and next could be maybe film reviews, advertisement reviews, and here we might give you a poster of a movie and ask you to do some writing on the poster from your viewpoint. So when you do that, you will do it only from your perspective, and this need not be strictly academic. And another thing is advertisement review. You have lots of advertisements and you have idea about advertisements, and here when it is a review of advertisements, you don't have to be very strictly academic there, like how we discussed in the uh, previous clips. Next is there could be maybe a question on writing letters. So letter writing in fact has always been a very important topic right from your primary education, and we want to include that in MA as well, because writing letters in fact is a very serious issue and we do that for various purposes. And when it is letter writing, it could be a business letter or it could be maybe a letter that you write within the scope of your MA. It could be some correspondence that you would have with either your teacher or maybe some authorities of the university. It could be anything. When it is letter writing, it is considered as non-academic writing. So you might have to think about the format of a letter, and you might have to think about the language that you have to use for a letter. There are plenty of books that are available with regard to this business communication, and try to concentrate on the fundamentals of letter writing. And in the meanwhile, there is so much information available on internet as well. Try to do some kind of surfing to know about how to write a film review, how to write an advertisement review, and how to write a newspaper report. Fine, newspaper report, sorry, not report, newspaper article. When it is newspaper article, there's one particular space, in all newspapers, which is called feature writing. There, the writers have a lot of autonomy to just express their opinion. And when it is newspaper report, I'm sorry, newspaper article, you don't have to worry about research. You don't have to worry about proving your point. You don't have to worry about giving evidences. So try to look up for information regarding how to write newspaper articles and journalistic articles. So there's always a difference between journalistic report and journalistic articles. And when it is a newspaper article on a given topic, you have to know like the basics of how to write a newspaper article. And you may have done it. Some of you may have definitely done it in Kannada. So this will be kind of a slightly different ball game, where the demand will be to write the same in English, which need not be very difficult for you, provided you pay some attention and provided you start doing some practice. You got to practice a lot, because this paper in fact is meant to train you in writing, and it is important that you go out of the university being pretty well equipped with certain skills of writing. So that's exactly what the paper intends to do for you. So make sure that you will do some extra research to know more about what is non-academic writing. And here, when we give you questions on movie reviews, try to understand that the review of the movie that you will be doing, you know, depends more upon how you have understood the storyline, and how you have understood the screenplay part, and how you have understood the use of lyrics, the use of music, and the use of language, that is conversation. So there are many things that will be part of a movie. And in case you have done some extra work like looking up information for movie reviews, you may also write about the uh, photography part and cinematography part. So there are many things that actually go into the making of a movie. And here the marks will be awarded on the basis of the density of your answer. Even though you make certain grammatical errors, I wouldn't mind. But what is important here for me is the kind of information that you give me about the movie that you are reviewing. So try to avoid writing the summary of the movie. When it is movie review, review is not giving the summary of the movie. You don't have to give me the story of the movie. You have to straight away talk, about the critical part of the movie. For example, if you are asked to write maybe a review on the movie Bahubali, besides talking about what exactly the story of the movie is, you have to talk about how the movie in fact talks about some story of the Middle Ages. How the director Rajmouli has managed to bring the story of the Middle Ages in a very interesting manner, and how he has managed to employ music, how he has managed to do this casting. And there are many things that you can talk about, and how music has been used here, and how lyrics have been used here, and how Bahubali's image has been constructed, and how Bahubali's image will remain in your memory almost forever, and how Bahubali in fact becomes a kind of an iconic hero for us, because he is a good husband, a good son, and in the meanwhile he's also an extremely good king. So there are many aspects that go into the making of a character like Bahubali. So you can definitely do this non-academic writing quite effectively, provided you do some serious research for looking up information about what non-academic writing is. So we'll do some extra work in the next few clips, and for now I think this should definitely do. Thank you. Hello, students. So, this is going to be a clip meant to give you some information about non academic writing, and this is a continuation instead. In fact, in the last clip, we kind of got to know certain details about non academic writing theoretically. Now, we'll just move towards certain practical aspect of non academic writing, and in this lecture, I want to give you some tips about how to write poems. And if possible, we'll also move further to know something about how to write plays, because both these actually come under non academic writing. And the first category here in this clip is writing poems. See, writing poems, in fact, is not really an uncommon activity for all of us. All of us have tried our hands at writing poems. And when it is a particular age, it's quite common for people to indulge in this act of writing poetry. But poetry, in fact, is not something which anybody can do at any point of time, though it's being done by everybody. What I mean to say here is writing poems, in fact, though is a very common activity, has its own sanctity. That is exactly why some of us write poems, but we are very hesitant to show it to people. In case you have the confidence to show it to people, then maybe you have acquired the skill of writing poetry. So, what is it that actually makes this act of writing poetry slightly difficult? There are certain rules that we have to follow. There are certain very important norms that we have to follow. Writing poems cannot happen with force. Because this is a class meant to convert all of you into poets, it doesn't mean that all of you will one day become published poets. And it's not really any kind of a promise from my side that the moment this lecture is over, you'll all acquire certain skills to become poets and start publishing poetry. Just that I intend to give you some tips about how to write poems so that you'll also know how to analyze poems. There are certain features that are implicit in a poem. And if you want to try your hand at writing poetry, then you have to understand that you also need to know what those norms are. So, a poem basically is an expression. A poem actually becomes an expression because you want to capture an experience in a very creative manner. And the experience that you want to capture in a very creative manner will, of course, have to be done in a language that is not really ordinary. I'll give you an example. When you go out for trips or tours, when you are in the midst of nature, supposing you go to a water body, if it's a sea, and when you are standing there on the shore, when you watch the waves coming towards you, beating down on your feet constantly, you might find that to be an excellent, an amazing experience. But if your sensitivity is slightly higher, you might find this experience to be captured. And you would also want to somehow use this particular experience as a metaphor to describe your real life experience. So when you are there on the seashore, when there are waves coming down towards you, it could definitely become a kind of an example which you can employ to describe some experience of your life in a language which is not really plain and prosaic. And this would definitely become a kind of a poem that is readable enough because you are trying to capture an experience of your life, and you are trying to use that particular experience to somehow communicate it to people, where the people would understand your experience by analyzing the metaphor that you are using. Then the poem that you have written in about maybe 6 or 7 lines would become understandable, and also it would become enjoyable. Because poetry, like I said, is not just an expression, it is supposed to be an enjoyable expression. Earlier, people would write poetry only to exhibit their language skills, and it used to be, of course, an exhibition of the high level rhetoric. And anybody, whoever was capable of writing poetry, in fact, was rich in vocabulary and was rich in figures of speech. And here we are now living in an age where there is not much stress on the exuberance that was seen in the use of words. Now we are living in the world where poetry becomes valuable only when it captures an experience and not really uses certain words which are ununderstandable for readers. So here you definitely have certain amount of concession when it comes to vocabulary. You don't have to be hugely rich in the use of your words, but there's one small rule that you have to follow. The words that you use should, of course, be concrete. Some words which in fact make sense to people. You cannot use certain words for which you don't know the meaning yourselves. So make sure that the choice of words that you make to write your poem has to be made very carefully. And after this, when you experience certain things and when you want to capture that in your poem, the next point here is, in order to make your poem sound slightly different from prose, try to practice rhyme schemes. And you don't have to force a rhyme scheme on your poem, but normally when people write poetry, they use a lot of rhyme schemes. Even if you listen to songs today, most lyric writers employ rhymes at times. It's not that the whole song would have some kind of a regular rhyme scheme, and it's not that you can analyze those songs on the basis of the rhymes that they would have used. But at least to start their lyric, the first 2 lines might have certain kind of a rhyme scheme. Somehow, rhyme actually becomes a kind of an inevitable feature of our poetry. So here, when it comes to writing poetry, the next thing here is how to use rhyme scheme. But please remember that you don't necessarily have to use a rhyme scheme forcefully. It's not inevitable that there should be a rhyme scheme in your poem, but in case there is some rhyme scheme which you have managed to bring out using a lot of intellect, then your poem looks fabulous. Another feature of a poem here is, normally when you write a poem, you talk in terms of lines and not in terms of sentences. I repeat, the difference between prosaic language and poetic language here is, prosaic language in fact is supposed to be ending with a full stop to make complete sense. But poetic language need not replicate prosaic language in order to make complete sense. The sense that poetic language makes depends more upon the use of the words, the use of figures of speech, and not on punctuation. Prosaic language depends heavily upon punctuation to be understood properly. So here you have to know that the poem has to be sensed by the reader only by analyzing the words that you have used and the images that you have used and the rhyme scheme you have used and the figures of speech you have used. But when it is prosaic language, punctuation does matter. Of course, in poetry also people use a lot of punctuation, but not really to end sentences or to make some sense to the reader or for any other thing. I hope you have understood this point. The next thing in any poem here is the length. We don't expect you to come up with extremely long poems. 4 stanzas should be enough. 4 stanzas of about 4 lines each should be more than enough. And when you come up with these 16 lines of your poem, ultimately the poem has to somehow communicate to the reader something meaningful. Ultimately, the reader should not again get back to the poet to ask for the meaning of his poem. That becomes funny, that becomes hilarious in case the reader just says like, your poem is good but I didn't understand it. The poet has to ensure that the poem is understandable enough. In the meanwhile, it is creative enough. So you have to employ a lot of creative faculty here to write a poem. It's not very easy, but these tips at the outset would be useful for you, and try to do it. Now we'll move towards the next aspect. What is it that I'm trying to say? I'm giving you tips as to how to write a poem, all right, but why is it so? In your examination, we might give you a theme and you might be asked to write a poem on it. And ultimately, the poem that you compose on the given theme has to have certain features in it. Hope you understand that. And you can definitely write a draft of the poem, use a pencil, and revise your poem, because it's very important that you revise anything that you write more than once, so that you would come across certain mistakes that you would want to correct, and make sure that your poem is flawless. And ultimately, when you are satisfied with your poem, then you can rewrite the entire poem all over again with a pen. So the non-academic part of your writing culture paper would definitely be on a theme that is given to you, on which you have to compose a poem. Otherwise, in the other papers, you would be given a poem to analyze, but here it is slightly a reverse order, where you would be given a theme on which you have to compose a poem. And this is not so easy as it appears to be apparently. You have to be very careful, you have to be very cautious, because you are being asked to compose a poem, and it also demands a lot of language skills. So hope you understood this. Next is the same kind of question, but here the demand will be to expect you to draft or maybe write a play. So the feature of a play, what is important in a play? Dialogization is very important in a play, meaning you have to create dialogues for the given theme. And this kind of an exercise could be familiar to some of you, because even in degree grammar paper, you might have had certain exercises where you had to develop conversations for a given theme. And here the same similar exercise, but slightly at a higher level, where your dialogues have got to make a lot of sense, and there should be, of course, creativity in your dialogue, and characterization does matter. So try to understand two things here. We are talking about dialogization and characterization. Creating dialogues is not so easy. It seems to be pretty simple, where you are going to be asked to write some sentences in English which sound like conversation between two people, but when it is dialogue or a dialogue between two people, we expect you to make a lot of sense using a lot of creativity. And because it's a play that you are writing, you also have to understand that a play cannot be just a one scene play here. The demand could be to compose a play that has at least 3 scenes. It could be just a one act play, we don't mind that. And here it will be for about 15 marks or so, and for 15 marks you should be in a position to write a play that goes to about 3 scenes. And if it is a theme that is related to maybe the current crisis of COVID-19, you could be asked to develop a conversation, and here there will be autonomy given to you to create characters And here when you start creating characters, make sure that there is a story in those three scenes. Ultimately, you should have the ability to create powerful dialogues, interesting characters, and ultimately in about three scenes you should make complete sense. So the demands are pretty high here, and you should make sure that you create proper dialogues. So we'll just take one thing for example, like I mentioned, the COVID crisis or COVID-19 crisis. Try to create a conversation between maybe people who are in extreme trouble because of this lockdown situation. And what would normally people discuss when they are troubled? When it is people like us who have no such trouble, even though it is slightly irritating to be home all the time, we don't really have certain common aspects that are shared by people who are in trouble. So I'm trying to lay emphasis on the word trouble here in the face of this COVID-19 crisis, and you are now creating dialogue for those two people. So the troubled characters. So your creativity has to now start working upon the creation of two characters who are in trouble because of this lockdown crisis. So who could be actually in certain kind of a trouble? The people who are daily wage laborers, or the coolie workers, or the people who work in movie sets, or even serial shooting, and people who run small eateries here and there, and the people who have small shops, business, small time business people, anybody who is in trouble. And think about it, or maybe you yourself could be one in such trouble, and you can think about your own story and create conversations so that it will be interesting and it will be easy also to for you to create conversations. So here you are creating conversation for two people or three people. You can definitely create any number of characters, but because it is only three scenes and because it is going to be just on one small theme that you have to write this particular play, try to limit the number of characters. You can also have certain variety in your characterization. You can definitely have some comical character, you can definitely have a lot of humor in it, and the marks will be awarded based on how you manage variety in your play. In case you have one character who evokes laughter, then definitely there will be a lot of marks for all such characterization. And this kind of creative work is not really easy for all. It takes a lot of effort, but here because you have time and because you have immense material available on internet, you can definitely look up some information and just check out how to write poems, how to write plays, and be prepared for this. And this kind of an activity in fact has got to be done practically, but because of not paucity of time, but because of this situation that we are in, I'm not able to kind of engage you all in practical classes. But somehow this should also be okay to give you some tips, and you can definitely do your practical work. And whoever has taken up this writing culture paper can contact me and show me your write-ups so that we can definitely discuss, and all of you have my number, and try to kind of be in touch with the concerned teachers, and also try to kind of keep submitting your assignments and make sure that your academic work is in progress. I understand because of this staying home situation for a long time, there should be some kind of a lethargy that would be setting in, but try to beat that lethargy and make sure that you are in touch with your concerned teachers so that the moment the classes reopen, you can definitely come back afresh and not really looking rusty. So hope this clip will make sense to you. Thank you.